Hello, and welcome to Cheers to Fears, where we take horror films and turn them into drinking games. We're your two hosts. I'm Alex.
And I'm Tucker. Happy Halloween, everybody. To celebrate, we will be making a drinking game for a Halloween movie. Since we finished every other Halloween movie from the franchise, we decided to make a drinking game for Trick or Treat, written and directed by Michael Dougherty.
Dougherty has worked on some other films, such as the 2019 Godzilla movie, but he has also worked on Krampus. With him writing and directing Trick or Treat and Krampus, it feels like holiday-themed horror comedy films are kind of his thing, and honestly, he's pretty good at making them.
Trick or Treat feels like it has earned the name Halloween over the John Carpenter movie because it breathes Halloween atmosphere. Every corner you turn, something reminds you of Halloween. The film is an anthology that follows Sam, a mysterious little boy that makes sure everybody is following the rules of Halloween.
The stories we get to see involve a boy and his father carving pumpkins, a young woman trying to get a date, a spooky story of children that drowned in the lake, and an old Scrooge-like man that hates Halloween. With Sam kicking around, it is vital that all of these people try their best to follow the rules of Halloween.
This is where we will inform you of our one and only spoiler warning. If you have not yet seen the film, we suggest that you pause the video and watch the movie with our drinking rules on screen now. If you have in fact watched the movie, come and join us as we take a deep dive into the rules.
The first rule we have for each drinking game is death. If you see somebody die, you take a sip. The total number of deaths we saw for this movie were 26, so that means we took that many sips for this rule. Even with the mercy rule applied still in some of these scenes, this was a relatively high count.
The next rule we will always have here on Cheers to Fears is that if you hear somebody scream, cry, or yell, you take a sip. This rule coincidentally had the exact same numbers of sips as the last rule, which is 26.
With the main horror rules out of the way, let's continue with the rules exclusively for Trick or Treat. This list of rules starts if you see monsters, you take a sip. This rule is really left up to interpretation, as some things may be considered a monster, but if you've seen the movie enough times, you would know not to consider that a monster. We also didn't include Sam at the start of the movie, because who knows, Sam could just be a little boy. But we did end up including him later on in the film. Back on topic, we ended up with 9 sips for this rule.
Now onto a rule as short as it is sweet. That rule is if you see any Halloween candy, you take a sip. This rule was applicable 12 times in the movie.
Next up, if you see Sam, you take a sip. We ended up seeing the little sack boy in the movie 11 times, but the opening credits really helped us add more to that total.
This rule should be rather simple to remember if you played any of our Halloween drinking games this past month. If you hear somebody say the word Halloween, you take a sip. In total, Halloween was said 18 times.
Happy Halloween! Screw you!
Rule number 7 is if there is a twist in the movie, you take a sip. In the movie, we took witness of the narrative turning out not as we expected 6 times.
Moving on to our next rule, if you hear somebody say trick or treat, or it is written in text, you take a sip. We counted 15 occasions that this happened throughout the movie.
Trick or treat. Thank you.
This next rule gave us 13 sips. That rule is if the scenes intertwine in any way, such as seeing characters from another scene, or in any other clever ways, you must take a drink.
Our last rule for today is if you witness somebody putting on or taking off a costume, you take a sip. This last rule we saw happen 12 times in the movie.
And that does it for all the rules for Trick or Treat. The total number of drinks for this movie by our count comes to 148 sips, which is just shy of drinking 5 standard 12-ounce cans. That number is based off of our 30 sip per can scale.
So drinking to the movie was pretty good, I'd say. There was a lot of drinks for scream, cry, and yell, as well as death. They both had 26, which was the most out of any rule.
Yeah.
And fun fact, the amount of deaths in this movie was the exact same as Saw 3D, which is 26, and that's the most deaths that we've seen in any movie so far.
Yeah. There's probably more to come, but we'll get to that day when we get to that day.
Yeah, exactly.
For all the rules, I feel like they kind of all held their own weight for the most part.
Yeah,
there was a lot of them that were like over 10 for sure at least.
Oh yeah, a lot of double digits in this one, and it was almost 5 drinks, which is quite a bit, but it's still, I don't know, like you said, each rule held its own, and it was a good drinking game. I had fun with it.
So talking about the movie, it wasn't released in many theaters, and the main reason for that is Warner Brothers pulled it randomly from their theater release schedule, and I don't necessarily know why. and it was probably a bad move on Warner Brothers' side of things, just because how much the movie probably made going straight to DVD and basically becoming a cult classic.
Yeah. And with that being said, it is pretty impressive how kind of mainstream this movie has become.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Sam is an icon in the horror industry.
Yeah, he's on that.
Exactly. So, like, he's such a familiar face. Even if you don't know what he's from or what his name is, you know what he looks like.
Yeah.
And it's pretty impressive, to say the least, that it didn't have a theatrical release and it still kind of made such a big impact.
Yeah, it still took off pretty well.
Yeah.
It was supposed to have comic books kind of released along with the movie, but obviously that kind of didn't happen because the whole 2007 Warner Brothers not wanting to release it or something like that. That's why it has like the whole comic book undertones with it saying like later in comic book text, how a lot of it was kind of comic book strips in like the beginning and end of the movie.
Yeah. So something interesting about this movie is it had 18 drafts of the script, which is insane.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine writing 18 drafts. But anyways, one of the concepts was that it was supposed to show Halloween as you age. So it introduced Halloween with the principal showing his kid how to carve a jack-o'-lantern. The adolescence was the kids that pulled the prank on Rhonda. And then with Laurie, how Halloween becomes more of a sex-crazed holiday and represents growing up. And then Krieg is the old man that just hates Halloween.
Yeah.
So I kind of like that idea or that concept, I guess, showing Halloween through the ages. It's an interesting concept.
Yeah, especially with, I feel like it's really odd to feel how Krieg is kind of like the Scrooge. It's kind of like a Christmas story, how there's the ghosts of Christmas past and future, Halloween past, Halloween future,
Yeah.
who knows. But I like the concept behind that a lot more. It does feel very Christmassy. And on the topic of how the movie kind of feels Christmassy, kind of what I mean by that is how everything feels like it's kind of like made like a Christmas movie. Like you see presents everywhere, Christmas trees everywhere, Santa, but it's like the Halloween version of that. So you see jack-o'-lanterns, which we didn't add to the rules for a good fucking reason.
Oh god, it was brutal.
So what else was there? Costumes, all that, decorations.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it felt like a Halloween movie. It felt like a Christmas movie, but Halloween.
Halloween version.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Which lead us to the next point about the set design, which I thought was the best part of the movie.
Oh, definitely.
Like, the cinematography was awesome, and it feels like such a nostalgic trip for Halloween, just going out with friends, trick-or-treating. Even the hours winding down to the end of Halloween, it really replicated the feel of Halloween as a kid, minus the killing, obviously,
Yeah.
but like, just the look of it, it really made me feel nostalgic.
Yeah. Speaking of which, that you bring up deaths, I'm pretty sure almost all the deaths happened off screen, which is pretty much unheard of in a horror movie. You don't see anybody like physically get like stabbed and die on screen. Everything kind of happens like more ambiguously, except for I think it might have been the kid like throwing up chocolate. Maybe he died on screen, maybe he died when he was like getting pulled back into the house, who knows.
Yeah.
But almost everything was done off screen, which is incredible for a horror movie, I'd say.
Yeah, I agree. It was a unique idea to go off of, I guess.
Especially with such a high kill count.
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly. 26, yeah.
Yeah. I feel like the dialogue in this movie was, as far as the comedy goes, it was fairly charming and funny for the most part. I'd say the humor worked. Such as the principal father yelling out, "Go and watch Charlie Brown." He's just screaming outside of the house, "But Charlie Brown's an asshole!"
Yeah.
Go watch Charlie Brown, and I'll be in a minute.
Charlie Brown's an asshole.
Billy Wilkins. Language.
Or when Krieg at the very end is just like all bandaged up from his fight with Sam, and the little girl's just like, "Great mommy costume!"
Yeah.
Thanks, Mr. Creek. Great mommy costume.
And just walks away.
Yeah, there's some good lines in this movie, and I agree, the humor did work. And another point about this movie is it has more slasher sins than the average Halloween movie, which was kind of funny to see, and it didn't feel out of place in the movie, but it just felt, it's weird to think about that Halloween, such a classic slasher, has less slasher sins than this, upbeat Halloween movie that
that doesn't show deaths on screen.
yeah. It's incredible to think about.
which goes in saying this, that not really everything's as kind of as it seems in this movie.
Yeah.
So, for example, you think the dad's gonna kill the kid, but he's actually helping him carve a jack-o'-lantern out of a human head.
Yeah, exactly.
So, as for characters, there was really no character development, which was fine for the most part because it wasn't about really the characters, it was about the story overall.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a Goosebumps. You don't watch Goosebumps for the characters, you watch it for kind of the story.
Yeah, and it helps that it's an anthology format, so you don't really need the character development when it's in that way, just because, like you said, it is about the story rather than the characters involved.
Yeah, it's really hard to kind of build character development off of 20 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Without having to tell like a great story.
Yeah.
And that wasn't the main point of it. The main point was to tell the story, not to develop characters. So I'm not really the biggest fan on anthology movies, to be honest, but I feel like this one is by far one of the better ones for sure, especially as far as horror goes.
Oh yeah, I agree that this is one of the better anthology movies, and I actually do like anthology movies. I like that they have those 20-minute bite-sized stories within them. But it is kind of hard to rank anthology movies just because there is like so many different stories going on,
and at times different directors too.
Yeah, exactly. And so, one of the stories might be awesome and then the other one might be a miss, but overall, I do like anthologies, especially if they're done well.
Yeah, but I do feel like this movie is really rewatchable, especially. One of the reasons is just because all the scenes were connected for the most part.
Yeah, and especially once you know that they're connected, then you can kind of start looking at foreshadowing, or like you might have missed something in the beginning that just really makes it clear that they're connected in some way, or there's little things planted that you would miss.
Yeah. So overall, what are your thoughts on Halloween, aka Trick or Treat?
I did enjoy it. It was a fun movie to watch. Like we mentioned, it had that nostalgia factor, not because of what the stories were, but just of how it looked and felt. And it was just a fun movie all around with the way that it intertwined and connected. It was fun. There was fun reveals throughout the whole thing. And it's just an easy movie to shut your brain off and enjoy with a group of friends, honestly.
Yeah, it's even a great movie if you want to watch it, like pay attention, see how everything's connected too. Like, it's very good for almost all audiences in a way.
Yeah, exactly. And finally, we come to the award ceremony, where we award one not-so-lucky nominee the Darwin Award. This award goes out to the character who made a stupid decision that resulted in them getting killed, someone else getting killed, or simply resulting in something bad happening that could have easily been avoided. This award can also be given to a character who is just plain dumb. Here are the nominees.
Today's first nominee is Old Man Krieg, because he refused to celebrate Halloween when doing so would make him vulnerable to tricks. And also for being responsible for the death of 8 students and expecting no repercussions.
The only other nominee we have for today is Emma, for wanting to take down Halloween decorations this very moment despite her being intoxicated. Not to mention that there is hundreds of decorations in her yard. Not only did taking down the decorations lead to her death, but she also stated that she hated Halloween, making it even more puzzling why she would put up so many decorations in the first place.
And the winner is Emma. She wins the Darwin Award for starting a job in the middle of the night that would probably take her until morning to finish. Not to mention, it was the cause of her death, and that she didn't even like Halloween, so it is questionable why she would have all these decorations in the first place.
And with all that being said, we hope you enjoyed our look into Trick or Treat. If you end up playing the game alongside the movie, or if you have any feedback or suggestions, let us know in the comments below. Also let us know in the comments what your favorite part of the movie was.
If you like our content, make sure to find us on Facebook, and like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next week episode, where we are going to be making a drinking game for Antlers, which was released in theaters just a couple of days ago. If you want to check out our most recent video, click on the box on the top right. Or if you want to see a playlist of all the drinking games and movies we review, click on the box below it. Thanks for tuning in, and this is us saying, cheers to fears.